Hey everyone, this is Lomi, and today I'm making some pants for a fantasy outfit for slim mini boy dolls. My particular doll is from Magic Time, but this should fit similar slim minis too, such as Minifee and the new Soom Little Gem. So we're going to get started with the pants, putting a front and back piece together and sewing down the outer seam. There are a few different ways these pants can be assembled, but I decided to use the method that provides the most accuracy, so it takes a little hand sewing but gives fantastic results. I sew together both pant legs along that outer seam, and then finish the edges with a zigzag stitch. You'll probably notice that I trim up my threads as I go. Next, fold open either half of the pants and put them together with the right sides together and pin along the curved edge that creates the crotch seam. Sew this closed and then use your scissors to trim the seam allowance a little smaller. I make it about half as wide, then finish the edge with a zigzag stitch. Trimming the seam allowance in a tight area like this makes it lay more nicely on the doll. Next, we'll finish the top edge of the pants with a zigzag stitch. When you're happy with how it looks, turn the waistband to the inside by about 1/4 inch, maybe a little more, and pin it in place. This will create a casing for us to add elastic. Make sure the casing is the same width all the way across, and make sure it's big enough for the elastic you'll be using. When you sew the casing closed, make sure you stay close to the zigzagged edge so there's plenty of room to thread the elastic through this. The elastic should fit around your doll's waist, a little on the snug side. It's better to have it tighter rather than looser. I recently got a strap turner and I found this is an awesome tool for putting elastic in doll garments. Just slide it through the casing, hook the elastic on the end, and pull it on through. I can't believe it took me this long to get one of these. It was so inexpensive. Use a pin to hold the elastic right at the edge of the waistband's casing so you'll be able to sew it in place. Then pull the other end of the elastic through to the other side and pin it there too. Now you can put the curved seam of the back of the pants together, pin it in place, and sew it shut. Be sure to backstitch at the top edge, going across the elastic, so it anchors it firmly in place. Sew around the curve, and just like we did with the front, trim the seam allowance and use a zigzag stitch to finish the edge. Next, we're going to prepare the pieces for the lower leg because there are 2 different ways this can be put in, and I'll give you the option to decide how you want to do it. Although my preferred method requires hand sewing, you can switch up the design a little and use machine sewing if it's easier for you, which is why we do this step now. Finish the sides and the bottom edge of the lower leg piece with a zigzag stitch. The top can be finished or left raw. I leave mine unfinished because it spares some bulkiness in the leg part later. Next, fold the sides of the lower leg piece in by about 1/4 inch and sew them down. I do them one after the other because it speeds things up a bit for me. Then turn the bottom edge up by 1/4 inch and sew that down on both leg pieces too. Now we can add these to the upper leg of the pants. If you want the lacing to be on the inside of the leg, you can gather the upper leg part to the lower leg part and sew them together, as long as you make sure to leave a 1/4 inch gap on either side of the upper leg so you have room to finish the inseam. But I like the lacing on the outside of the leg, and the best way to make it look good is to do this part by hand. That means for me, the next step is pinning the inseam of the pants closed and sewing up one leg and down the other, then finishing the edge with a zigzag stitch. Next, I use a hand needle and some thread to run a gathering stitch around the edge of the leg opening. The lower leg piece gets folded in half right side out and inserted into the upper leg with the open side against the outer seam. You'll probably notice that I stuck mine in wrong side out in the video because I was looking at the camera and not my work. But fortunately I caught it and turned it the right way before continuing to the sewing part. I pin this in place, and once that edge is pinned, I can grab the tails of the gathering thread and gather the pants tight against the lower leg piece. I pin around the edges and keep the heads of the pins toward the top, because it protects me from poking myself on them as I sew this in place with a hand needle. I tried sewing these pants several times before deciding this was the best method. Sewing the lower leg in by machine tended to leave bigger gaps, while sewing it by hand allowed me to ensure the lower leg part met perfectly at the outer seam the way I wanted. It's such a small piece that it doesn't take long to sew by hand. And I treated the edges of the fabric with a bit of fray check to ensure it wouldn't fray, without me having to add the bulk of thread by zigzagging the edges of the fabric. After this is sewn together, the gathering thread can be pulled out and thrown away. Both lower legs get sewn in like this, and then I use a ruler and water-soluble pencil to mark where I want eyelets to go for the lacing. After I had everything measured and marked perfectly, I discovered I didn't have enough eyelets left in the color I wanted to use, so I ended up using my machine's automatic buttonhole feature to make round buttonholes instead. They didn't turn out perfectly, but they're good enough, and I can install eyelets over the top of them later on when I get more of the color I need. And now with a bit of ribbon to lace up the legs, these doll pants are done. Now he just needs a shirt. And that's all for today though. Thanks for watching. Bye.